The year was 2097, and Earth had never seemed so alive. The skies above the bustling cities shimmered with sleek spacecraft taking off for distant colonies, while massive orbital stations orbited like silent sentinels watching over humanity's achievements. It was an age of progress, a time when nations had set aside their differences to form the United Earth Coalition, UEC, a governing body that oversaw all human activity, both on Earth and beyond its atmosphere. Humanity wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. Dr. Elena Voss stood at the observation deck of the UEC flagship Aegis, her hands clasped behind her back as she gazed out at the endless expanse of stars. Her sharp green eyes reflected the faint glow of distant suns, but there was no peace in them. For all the advancements humanity had made, something felt off. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but unease gnawed at the edges of her mind like static. Interference on an old radio. Elena was one of the brightest minds in xenobiology, a field dedicated to studying alien life forms. Since humanity's first contact with the Xenaria, reptilian species with crystalline scales and bioluminescent markings, decades ago, relations between the two civilizations had been cautious yet stable. Trade agreements were signed, cultural exchanges took place, and joint scientific missions became commonplace. But lately, whispers of tension had begun to ripple through diplomatic channels. Colonists reported strange occurrences near disputed territories, and rumors circulated about resource shortages affecting Xenari-controlled planets. Her thoughts were interrupted by Commander Marcus Halle, a tall man with graying hair and a commanding presence. He approached her quietly, his boots clicking softly against the metallic floor. "Still staring at the void, Doc?" he asked, his tone light but tinged with concern. Elena turned to face him, forcing a smile. "Just thinking," she replied. "Sometimes it helps to remind myself how small we are compared to everything out here." Halle nodded, his expression serious now. "Small doesn't mean weak, though. We've come a long way since those early days of space exploration. Oh, look at us now. We're practically neighbors with another species." "Neighbors who don't always see eye to eye," Elena muttered under her breath. She hadn't meant for Halle to hear, but he caught it anyway. "True enough," he admitted. "But diplomacy has kept things steady so far. As long as cooler heads prevail, I think we'll be fine." Elena wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered. Over the past few weeks, her team aboard the Aegis had been analyzing data collected from recent expeditions to uncharted regions of space. What they found disturbed her deeply. Traces of biological compounds unlike anything seen before suggested that someone or something was experimenting with dangerous technology. And based on the patterns, it wasn't human. Before she could delve further into her findings, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed overhead, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Crew members scrambled to their stations, their voices overlapping in urgent calls. Elena's heart raced as she followed Halle to the command center. "What's happening?" she demanded, gripping the edge of a console for support. "We're receiving distress signals from multiple colonial outposts." Halle answered grimly. His fingers flew over the controls, pulling up live feeds from affected areas. What they saw made Elena's blood run cold. Entire settlements were engulfed in flames. Buildings crumbled, vehicles exploded, and people ran screaming as shadowy figures descended from the sky. The attackers were unmistakably Xenari. Their sleek, angular ships unleashed devastating energy blasts, reducing everything in their path to rubble. Civilians caught in the chaos had no chance to escape. Elena watched in horror as the footage played out. One feed showed a young girl clutching a stuffed animal, her wide eyes filled with terror as a beam of light vaporized her instantly. Another displayed a family huddled together in a bunker, only to have the roof collapse on top of them moments later. The scale of destruction was unimaginable. "This can't be real," Elena whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Why would they do this? Hale clenched his jaw, his knuckles white as he gripped the railing. It looks like diplomacy failed, he said through gritted teeth. They forced our hand. Within hours, the UEC declared war on the Xenari. Emergency broadcasts echoed across every channel, rallying humanity to defend itself against what was being called the greatest betrayal in history. Ships were mobilized, weapons armed, and troops deployed to the front lines. The calm facade of coexistence shattered overnight, replaced by raw anger and fear. As the Aegis prepared to join the fight, Elena retreated to her quarters, overwhelmed by grief and guilt. She replayed the attack footage in her mind, unable to shake the images of innocent lives lost. How could the Xenari justify such brutality? Had humanity somehow provoked them without realizing it? Or was this simply the nature of interstellar conflict? Lying awake that night, Elena stared at the ceiling, her thoughts spiraling. The massacre had revealed a harsh truth. Beneath the polished surface of cooperation lay hidden tensions waiting to erupt. The mask of civility had been removed, exposing the ugly reality underneath. War had come knocking, and there was no turning back. For Elena, the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. She knew more than most about the dangers lurking in the cosmos, and now she feared that her discoveries might play a pivotal role in determining humanity's fate. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The days that followed the massacre felt like a blur to Dr. Elena Voss. The once peaceful hum of activity aboard the Aegis had transformed into a chaotic symphony of urgency and dread. Everywhere she looked, crew members moved with purpose, their faces etched with determination but also fear. Orders were shouted across corridors, equipment was loaded onto shuttles, and holographic maps of battle zones flickered in every corner of the ship. War had come, and it brought with it an overwhelming sense of inevitability. Elena tried to focus on her work, burying herself in data analysis and research. It was easier than thinking about the lives lost or the destruction she had witnessed. She spent long hours in the lab, poring over samples collected from contested regions of space. Her initial findings pointed to something deeply unsettling: traces of biological compounds that matched patterns associated with weaponized pathogens. These weren't natural occurrences, they were engineered. And judging by the genetic markers, they originated from Xenari technology. At first, Elena hesitated to share her discoveries. She knew what such information would mean. If the UEC leadership learned that the Xenari were developing biological weapons capable of wiping out entire ecosystems, including human ones, it would only fuel the flames of war. But withholding the truth felt equally wrong. Humanity deserved to know what it was up against. Finally, she decided to present her findings to Commander Hall. He listened intently as she explained her conclusions, his expression darkening with each word. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as if trying to stave off a headache. "This changes everything," he said after a long pause. "If the Xenari are willing to use bioweapons, we can't afford to hold back. We need every advantage we've got." Elena nodded reluctantly. She understood the logic behind his words, but it didn't make them any easier to hear. The thought of escalating the conflict filled her with unease. Still, she couldn't deny the reality of the situation. The Xenari had already proven they were capable of unspeakable brutality. Humanity needed to prepare for the worst. As the UEC mobilized its forces, Elena found herself drawn into discussions about Project Phoenix. It was a classified initiative she had been involved with since its inception. A last resort bioweapon designed to target extraterrestrial threats. The project had always been controversial, even among those who supported its development. Some saw it as a necessary safeguard. Others viewed it as a dangerous step toward becoming no better than humanity's enemies. Now, However, there was no time for debate. With the Zenari threat looming larger than ever, the UEC High Command ordered Elena to refine Phoenix for potential deployment. She worked tirelessly alongside a team of engineers and geneticists, tweaking the weapon's design to maximize its effectiveness while minimizing collateral damage. Each adjustment weighed heavily on her conscience, but she reminded herself that this might be humanity's only chance at survival. Despite her efforts to stay focused on the task at hand, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The Zenari attack had been sudden and devastating, but it didn't feel random. There had to be more to their actions than simple aggression. Determined to uncover the truth, she began digging deeper into intercepted transmissions and intelligence reports. What she found shocked her to her core. Buried within layers of encrypted data were fragments of conversations between high-ranking Zenari officials. They spoke of desperation, of dwindling resources, and a dying homeworld. Their attacks on human colonies weren't driven by malice or greed. They were acts of survival. The Zenari viewed humanity's rapid expansion into space as a direct threat to their own existence. By crippling Earth's ability to colonize new planets, they hoped to secure enough resources to save their species from extinction. Elena sat alone in her lab, staring at the decoded messages on her screen. Her hands trembled as she processed the implications. The Zenari weren't monsters. They were victims of circumstance, just like humanity. Their homeworld was collapsing under the weight of environmental disasters, leaving them with no choice but to fight for survival. In their eyes, humanity wasn't an enemy. It was competition. The revelation left Elena reeling. Were the Zenari truly responsible for the massacre, or were they simply doing what they believed was necessary? And if so, did humanity bear any responsibility for provoking them? After all, the UEC hadn't exactly been transparent about its own resource-gathering operations in disputed territories. Perhaps the Zenari saw humans as invaders encroaching on their territory, much like how humanity might react if aliens landed on Earth, demanding access to its riches. These questions haunted Elena as she struggled to reconcile her newfound understanding of the Zenari with the atrocities they had committed. She wanted to believe that diplomacy could still prevail, that there was a way to resolve the conflict without further bloodshed. But the reality was stark. The UEC had already declared war, and turning back now seemed impossible. Complicating matters further was the fact that Elena wasn't sure whom to trust with this information. Sharing it with the UEC leadership risked undermining morale and weakening humanity's resolve at a critical moment. On the other hand, keeping it to herself meant perpetuating the cycle of violence. Either way, she felt trapped between two equally devastating outcomes. While Elena wrestled with her conscience, the war raged on. The UEC launched its first major counteroffensive, targeting key Zenari strongholds in an effort to cripple their military capabilities. Massive fleets clashed in the void of space, exchanging volleys of energy beams and missiles. The battles were brutal and costly, leaving both sides reeling. Entire squadrons were wiped out in seconds, and debris fields, littered with wreckage, became grim reminders of the cost of war. Elena accompanied the fleet as a scientific advisor, her presence requested during strategic planning sessions. Though she preferred the solitude of her lab, she understood the importance of contributing wherever she could. Watching the destruction unfold before her eyes was harrowing. She saw friends and colleagues fall in battle, their sacrifices adding to the mounting toll of lives lost. Amidst the chaos, Elena noticed something curious. The Zenari fought fiercely, but their tactics suggested they were holding back. They avoided targeting civilian ships whenever possible, and often retreated when faced with overwhelming odds. It was almost as if they were fighting not to win, but to survive. This behavior aligned with the intercepted transmissions she had uncovered, reinforcing her belief that the Zanari weren't motivated by hatred or conquest. As the days turned into weeks, Elena grew increasingly conflicted. Part of her wanted to shout the truth from the rooftops, to expose the Zanari's desperation and force humanity to reconsider its stance. Another part of her feared the consequences of such an action. Would anyone listen? Or would they dismiss her as naive or traitorous? One evening, as the Aegis drifted through the remnants of a recent battle, Elena stood alone on the observation deck. The stars outside seemed dimmer somehow, as though even they mourned the loss of life. She thought about the countless innocents caught in the crossfire, both human and Zanari, and wondered if there was any hope left for peace. Her musings were interrupted by Commander Hawley, who joined her silently. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then, finally, Hawley broke the silence. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the galaxy on your shoulders," he said gently. Elena managed a weak smile. "Maybe I am." Hawley studied her for a moment before speaking again. "Whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone. We're all in this together." His words offered little comfort, but they reminded Elena of why she had chosen this path in the first place. She hadn't become a scientist to build weapons or wage wars. She had done it to understand, to bridge gaps between species and uncover truths hidden in the vastness of space. Now, more than ever, that mission felt vital. "I just wish I knew what the right thing to do was," she admitted quietly. Hawley placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes there isn't a clear answer. All we can do is follow our instincts and hope we make the world a little better than we found it." Elena nodded, feeling a small spark of resolve ignite within her. Whether or not she could change the course of the war, she vowed to keep searching for answers. Somewhere out there, buried beneath layers of fear and misunderstanding, lay the truth about why the Zanari had attacked, and perhaps a way to end the bloodshed. For now, though, the galaxy remained locked in conflict, its fate uncertain. The mask of civility had been removed, revealing the raw emotions driving both sides. As Elena gazed out at the stars, she couldn't help but wonder, would humanity and the Zanari find a way to coexist? Or would their differences tear them apart forever? Only time would tell. Asterisk. The war had dragged on for months, and the toll was becoming unbearable. Humanity's brightest minds and bravest soldiers were being pushed to their limits. Yet the Zanari showed no signs of backing down. Every victory came at a steep cost, and every defeat left humanity reeling. The United Earth Coalition (UEC) fleet had suffered heavy losses, and morale among the crew of the Aegis was at an all-time low. The once shining dream of peaceful coexistence with alien life now felt like a distant memory. Dr. Elena Voss worked tirelessly in her lab, trying to make sense of the chaos around her. She knew that humanity couldn't keep fighting this way forever. The Zanari were relentless, their tactics cunning and unpredictable. They struck quickly, disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Even when the UEC managed to secure a win, it often felt hollow, like punching through water. No matter how hard they fought, the conflict seemed endless. Elena's thoughts kept returning to Project Phoenix. It loomed over her like a storm cloud, its potential both terrifying and undeniable. The bioweapon had been designed as a last resort, but now it felt more like a ticking time bomb. If deployed, Phoenix could devastate the Zanari, potentially turning the tide of the war in humanity's favor. But at what cost? The weapon was indiscriminate, capable of wiping out not just enemy combatants, but entire populations, including innocent civilians. Using it would mean crossing a line that could never be UNCROSSED. Despite her reservations, Elena threw herself into refining Phoenix. She worked alongside her team, tweaking its genetic structure to minimize collateral damage while maximizing efficiency. Each adjustment brought her closer to completing the weapon, but it also weighed heavier on her conscience. Late at night, she would stare at the vials of glowing liquid locked away in secure containment units, wondering if she was helping to save humanity or destroy it. While working on Phoenix, Elena continued to dig deeper into the intercepted Zenari transmissions. Her earlier discovery about their dying homeworld gnawed at her. She couldn't shake the image of the Zenari as desperate beings fighting for survival rather than cold-blooded killers. What if there was still a chance to negotiate peace? What if humanity could offer them something, resources, technology, or even a new home in exchange for ending the war? But every time she considered sharing her findings with Commander Hale or the UEC leadership, doubt crept in. Would they listen? Or would they see her as naive, someone blinded by sympathy for the enemy? The massacre of human colonies still haunted everyone aboard the Aegis. Images of burning cities and terrified civilians played on repeat in news broadcasts, fueling anger and calls for vengeance. In such an environment, talk of compromise might be seen as weakness or worse, betrayal. One day, while analyzing data from a recent skirmish, Elena stumbled upon something unexpected. Hidden within the debris field of a destroyed Zenari ship were fragments of ancient alien artifacts. At first glance, they appeared insignificant, just jagged, pieces of metal covered in strange symbols, but something about them caught her attention. The patterns didn't match anything associated with the Zenari or any other known species. Intrigued, Elena brought the fragments to her lab for further study. Hours turned into days as she examined the artifacts. Using advanced scanning equipment, she uncovered layers of encoded information embedded within the symbols. Slowly, painstakingly, she began to decode it. What she discovered sent chills down her spine. The artifacts belonged to an ancient civilization known only as the Veil, a hyper-advanced species rumored to have existed long before humanity or the Zenari. According to the decoded messages, the Veil thrived on chaos and conflict. They manipulated younger civilizations, pitting them against each other to harvest energy released during large-scale warfare. Entire galaxies had fallen victim to their schemes, their resources drained and populations decimated. Elena's hands trembled as she pieced together the implications. Could the Veil be behind the current conflict? Had they orchestrated the tensions between humanity and the Zenari, driving both sides toward annihilation? The idea was almost too horrifying to comprehend. If true, it meant neither side was truly responsible for the war. They were merely pawns in a cosmic game. Determined to confirm her suspicions, Elena cross-referenced the artifact data with intelligence reports from recent battles. Patterns began to emerge. Many of the most devastating attacks, both by the Zenari and against them, had occurred near regions rich in rare minerals and energy sources. These areas also coincided with locations where ancient ruins had been discovered. It was as if the Veil had planted triggers throughout the galaxy, waiting for unsuspecting species to stumble upon them and spark violence. Elena knew she had to act fast. If the Veil was indeed manipulating events, exposing their involvement could change everything. But she needed proof, something concrete that would convince the UEC leadership and hopefully the Zenari as well. She reached out to Commander Hale, explaining her findings and requesting permission to investigate further. Hale listened intently, his expression growing darker with each word. When she finished, he sat in silence for a moment, processing the gravity of what she had uncovered. "If you're right," he said finally, "this isn't just about us and the Zenari anymore. This is bigger than anyone realized." "I know," Elena replied. "But if we can prove the Veil's involvement, maybe we can stop this war before it destroys us all." Hale nodded slowly. "You'll have my support. But be careful, Doc. If the Veil really is pulling the strings, they won't take kindly to being exposed." With Hale's backing, Elena assembled a small team to assist her in gathering evidence. They scoured databases, analyzed more artifacts, and traced connections between key battle sites and ancient ruins. The deeper they dug, the clearer the picture became. The Veil had been influencing both humanity and the Jannari for years, sowing seeds of mistrust and provoking conflicts to serve their own ends. As the investigation progressed, Elena found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about the universe. The realization that an unseen force had been guiding events made her feel small and powerless. Yet it also gave her a glimmer of hope. If humanity and the Jannari could recognize the truth, they might stand a chance of breaking free from the Veil's grip. Meanwhile, the war raged on. The UEC launched another major offensive, targeting a heavily fortified Jannari stronghold. Elena accompanied the mission, her role shifting from scientist to strategist. As the fleet engaged the enemy, she monitored communications and scanned for signs of Veil interference. Sure enough, anomalies began to appear: unexplained power surges, sudden shifts in battlefield conditions, and bizarre malfunctions in both human and Jannari technology. Elena relayed her observations to Holly, who ordered the fleet to fall back temporarily. The retreat was met with resistance from some commanders, who saw it as a sign of weakness. But Holly stood firm, trusting Elena's instincts. "We're walking into a trap," he told his officers. "If we don't figure out what's really going on here, we're playing right into someone else's hands." Back aboard the Aegis, Elena presented her findings to the senior staff. Using holographic projections, she demonstrated how the Veil's influence correlated with critical moments in the war. She argued that continuing to fight blindly would only benefit their true enemy. Her presentation sparked heated debate. Some dismissed her theory as far-fetched, insisting that humanity's priority should remain defeating the Jannari. Others saw merit in her argument, recognizing the need for a new approach. Ultimately, Commander Holly sided with Elena, ordering a temporary ceasefire to allow for further investigation. The decision was controversial, drawing criticism from both within the fleet and back on Earth. News outlets accused the UEC of cowardice, while soldiers grumbled about abandoning the fight. But Elena remained steadfast, knowing that uncovering the truth was the only way to end the cycle of violence. As the days passed, her resolve only grew stronger. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, but one thing was certain: humanity couldn't face this threat alone. Whether or not the Jannari would listen, and whether or not they could put aside their differences, remained to be seen. But Elena held on to the belief that understanding and cooperation were still possible, even in the darkest of times. For now, the war continued to rage, its outcome uncertain. But deep within the confines of the Aegis, a seed of hope had been planted. Elena vowed to nurture it, no matter the cost. Somewhere beyond the stars, the truth awaited, and with it, perhaps, a path toward peace. The temporary ceasefire ordered by Commander Holly was met with skepticism from both sides of the conflict. Among the crew of the Aegis, whispers of betrayal and weakness spread like wildfire. Soldiers who had fought tirelessly against the Jannari now questioned whether their sacrifices had been in vain. Back on Earth, public opinion was divided. Some saw the pause as a chance to regroup and reassess the situation, while others viewed it as an act of cowardice that undermined humanity's resolve. For Dr. Elena Voss, the ceasefire offered a rare moment of clarity amidst the chaos. She knew time was running out, both for humanity and the Jannari. If her theory about the Veil's involvement was correct, exposing their manipulation could be the key to ending the war. But proving it wouldn't be easy. The evidence she had gathered so far was compelling, yet fragmented. To convince not only the UEC leadership, but also the Jannari themselves, she needed something undeniable: a smoking gun that tied the Veil directly to the escalating hostilities. With Commander Hale's support, Elena devised a bold plan. She proposed sending a small team deep behind enemy lines to infiltrate a heavily fortified Zenari command center. Intelligence reports suggested the facility housed critical data servers containing information about recent military operations. If they could access those servers, they might uncover concrete proof of the Veil's interference. It was a dangerous mission, fraught with risks, but Elena believed it was humanity's best shot at uncovering the truth. Holly agreed, though reluctantly. "This is a suicide mission," he warned her during a private meeting. "If you're caught, there won't be any rescue attempts. You'll be on your own." "I know," Elena replied firmly. "But if we don't try, we'll never know what's really going on. And if I'm right, this could save millions of lives, human and Zenari alike." In the end, Holly gave his approval, assigning a squad of elite soldiers to accompany Elena. The team consisted of 6 members, each chosen for their unique skills: stealth, combat expertise, and technical proficiency. Leading them was Captain Ria Torres, a seasoned veteran known for her quick thinking and unshakable determination. Though initially wary of working alongside a scientist, Torres quickly warmed to Elena. After seeing her dedication and resourcefulness, the mission began under the cover of darkness. A cloaked shuttle slipped past the Zenari patrols, dropping the team near the outskirts of the command center. From there, they moved cautiously through dense forests and rocky terrain, avoiding detection at every turn. Elena stayed close to Torres, her heart pounding with every step. This was far removed from the safety of her lab, and the weight of her decision pressed heavily on her shoulders. As they approached the facility, the landscape grew increasingly barren. The ground was scarred with craters and littered with debris, remnants of earlier battles. Massive energy barriers surrounded the compound, pulsating with an eerie blue light. Getting inside would require disabling the shields, a task assigned to one of the team's engineers. Corporal Liam Chun worked quickly, attaching a device to the barrier generator hidden beneath a pile of rubble. His fingers flew over the controls as he bypassed layer after layer of security protocols. Minutes felt like hours as the rest of the team stood watch, weapons drawn and ready for trouble. Finally, with a soft hum, the barrier flickered and died, creating a narrow gap just wide enough for them to slip through. Inside the command center, the air was thick with tension. The corridors were dimly lit, lined with metallic walls that reflected faint glimmers of red emergency lights. The team moved silently, sticking to the shadows as they navigated toward the central server room. Along the way, they encountered several Zenari guards, forcing them to rely on stealth and precision strikes to avoid raising the alarm. Elena marveled at how efficiently the squad operated. Each member moved with practiced ease, their movements fluid and coordinated. She tried to emulate their calm demeanor, though her nerves threatened to get the better of her. Every corner turn felt like stepping closer to disaster, and the thought of being captured or worse lingered in the back of her mind. When they finally reached the server room, Elena exhaled a shaky breath. Rows of towering machines hummed softly, their screens displaying streams of complex data. She immediately set to work, connecting her portable scanner to the main terminal. Her fingers danced across the keyboard as she sifted through files, searching for anything related to the Veil. Hours passed and frustration began to creep in. Despite her efforts, the data seemed deliberately obfuscated, its contents locked behind layers of encryption. Just as Elena started to lose hope, she stumbled upon a hidden directory labeled with symbols matching those found on the ancient artifacts. Her pulse quickened as she accessed the files within. What she discovered confirmed her worst fears. The Zenari hadn't acted alone. They had been receiving transmissions from an unknown source instructing them on where and when to strike. Coordinates matched locations rich in resources, and timestamps aligned perfectly with major battles. Most damning of all was a series of encrypted messages referencing the Veil by name. They spoke of harvest zones and energy yields, painting a chilling picture of exploitation and manipulation. Elena downloaded the files onto a secure drive, her hands trembling with a mix of relief and dread. She had found the proof she needed, but getting it back to the Aegis would be another challenge entirely. Their exit was anything but smooth. As the team prepared to leave, alarms blared throughout the facility, signaling their presence had been detected. Reinforcements poured into the corridors, forcing the squad to fight their way out. Bullets ricocheted off walls, and energy blasts illuminated the darkness as chaos erupted around them. Taurus barked orders, keeping the group focused despite the mounting pressure. "Stay tight. Don't let them flank us," she shouted, firing bursts from her rifle with deadly accuracy. Elena clutched the drive tightly to her chest, following closely behind Torres. Her legs burned with exertion as they sprinted through winding hallways, dodging explosions and collapsing structures. At one point, a stray blast knocked her off her feet, sending her sprawling onto the cold floor. Before she could react, a Zanari soldier loomed over her, weapon raised. Time seemed to slow as Elena braced for impact. But before the soldier could fire, a blur of motion tackled him to the ground. It was Chun, wielding a knife with lethal precision. He dispatched the threat in seconds, then hauled Elena to her feet. "Thanks," she gasped, still clutching the drive. "No problem," Chun replied grimly. "Just keep moving." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the shuttle. Exhausted and battered, the team piled inside as the pilot gunned the engines, lifting off just as Zanari reinforcements closed in. The shuttle rocked violently as enemy fire peppered its hull, but it managed to break free of the planet's atmosphere and rendezvous with the Aegis. Back aboard the flagship, Elena wasted no time presenting her findings to Commander Holly and the senior staff. Using holographic projections, she laid out the evidence piece by piece, showing how the Veil had orchestrated the entire conflict. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "So we've been played," Holly said finally, his voice heavy with disbelief. "Both sides manipulated like puppets." "It's worse than that," Elena added. "If we don't stop them, they'll keep doing this to us, to the Zanari, to anyone else they can exploit." Holly nodded slowly, his expression grim. "Then we have no choice. We need to confront them head-on." The UEC leadership convened an emergency meeting to discuss next steps. After much debate, they agreed to reach out to the Zanari, offering to share the evidence in hopes of forging an alliance. It was a risky move, but with the fate of both species hanging in the balance, there was little alternative. To everyone's surprise, the Zanari responded. Their leaders listened intently as Elena presented the findings, their crystalline eyes narrowing in anger and realization. For the first time, humanity and the Zanari stood united not as enemies, but as victims of a greater threat. Together, they devised a plan to strike at the heart of the Veil's operations. Intelligence pointed to a hidden stronghold buried within the accretion disk of a black hole, shielded by gravitational forces that made it nearly impossible to approach. Yet, if they succeeded, they might stand a chance of dismantling the Veil's network and ending their reign of manipulation once and for all. As preparations began, Elena allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. The road ahead would be perilous, and failure wasn't an option. But for the first time since the war began, she felt a flicker of hope. Humanity and the Zanari had taken the first step toward understanding, and perhaps redemption. The galaxy remained vast and mysterious, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. But somewhere beyond the stars, a new chapter was beginning, one written not in blood, but in courage and cooperation. The journey to the Veil's stronghold was unlike anything the combined forces of humanity and the Zanari had ever attempted. The black hole loomed ahead, a swirling maw of darkness surrounded by an accretion disk that burned with blinding intensity. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a cosmic beast that seemed alive, its gravitational pull distorting space-time itself. For days, the fleet navigated carefully through the chaotic region, their ships buffeted by radiation storms and unpredictable energy surges. Dr. Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the Aegis, her eyes fixed on the view screen as the black hole grew larger with each passing hour. She felt a strange mix of awe and dread, knowing they were heading into uncharted territory. This wasn't just another battle. It was a confrontation with something ancient, powerful, and utterly alien. The Veil had manipulated civilizations for eons, sowing chaos and harvesting energy from destruction. Now, humanity and the Zenari were about to face them head-on. Commander Hawley paced behind her, his expression tense but resolute. "Are you sure this is going to work?" he asked, his voice low enough that only Elena could hear. "No," she admitted honestly. "But we don't have any other options." Hawley nodded grimly. "Let's hope luck is on our side." The plan was simple in theory, but incredibly risky in practice. A joint task force consisting of human and Zenari ships would penetrate the accretion disk, using advanced shielding technology to withstand the intense radiation. Once inside, they would locate the Veil's primary weapon and device capable of collapsing stars, and disable it before it could be used against them. Time was critical. If the Veil realized what they were doing, they might activate the weapon prematurely, dooming everyone involved. As the fleet approached the edge of the accretion disk, the tension aboard the Aegis was palpable. Crew members worked feverishly at their stations, monitoring readings and adjusting course corrections to avoid being pulled into the black hole's event horizon. Outside, streaks of light zipped past the windows as debris and plasma spiraled toward oblivion. It was like flying through a kaleidoscope of fire and shadow, every moment fraught with danger. Elena stayed close to Holly, offering input whenever needed. Though not a soldier, her knowledge of the Veil's tactics proved invaluable. She relayed real-time data to the fleet commanders, helping them anticipate potential traps or ambushes. Her calm demeanor inspired confidence among the crew, even as fear gnawed at the edges of their resolve. Finally, after hours of careful maneuvering, the fleet reached the heart of the accretion disk. There, nestled within the swirling chaos, lay the Veil's stronghold, a massive structure shaped like a jagged crescent moon, its surface covered in glowing runes that pulsed with an eerie light. Energy beams shot out from turrets mounted along its perimeter, targeting anything that ventured too close. "This is it," Holly announced over the comms. "All units, prepare for engagement." The battle began immediately. Human and Zenari ships broke formation, launching coordinated attacks against the stronghold's defenses. Explosions lit up the void as missiles struck turrets, and energy blasts ricocheted off reinforced shields. Fighters darted between larger vessels, engaging enemy drones, while bombers targeted weak points in the structure. Elena watched the chaos unfold, her stomach churning with anxiety. Every explosion reminded her of the lives at stake, both human and Zenari. But there was no turning back now. They had come too far to give up. Amidst the fighting, a team led by Captain Ria Torres boarded a shuttle bound for the stronghold. Their mission was to infiltrate the facility and disable the star-collapsing device from within. Elena accompanied them, her role shifting once again from scientist to strategist. Though terrified, she refused to let fear dictate her actions. If humanity and the Zenari were going to survive, she needed to see this through to the end. The shuttle landed in a hangar bay, where the team disembarked under heavy fire. Zenari soldiers loyal to the Veil guarded the entrance, forcing Torres and her squad to fight their way through. Elena stayed close to the group, clutching a small handheld scanner that displayed schematics of the stronghold. She guided them through twisting corridors and labyrinthine passageways, avoiding traps and automated defenses. At one point, they encountered a massive chamber filled with floating orbs of light. Each orb contained fragments of memory scenes from civilizations long destroyed by the Veil. Elena paused briefly, mesmerized by the images. She saw cities crumbling, planets burning, and countless lives extinguished in an instant. It was a grim reminder of what they were fighting against. "Keep moving," Torres urged, snapping Elena out of her trance. "We don't have time to waste." They pressed onward, finally reaching the control room housing the star-collapsing device. The machine was enormous, its core glowing with unstable energy. Wires and conduits snaked across the walls, connecting it to various systems throughout the stronghold. Elena quickly set to work, attaching her scanner to a terminal and beginning the process of disabling the weapon. But just as she started, alarms blared throughout the facility. Reinforcements poured into the room, surrounding the team. Outnumbered and outgunned, Torres and her squad formed a defensive perimeter, holding off waves of attackers while Elena worked frantically to complete her task. Sweat dripped down her forehead as she typed furiously, bypassing layer after layer of security protocols. The countdown timer above the device ticked steadily downward, signaling imminent activation. With seconds to spare, she managed to shut it down, causing the core to dim and the entire system to power down. Cheers erupted among the team, but their relief was short-lived. The Veil wasn't done yet. Massive drones descended from the ceiling, armed with weapons far beyond anything humanity or Zanari possessed. The battle raged on, pushing everyone to their limits. In the end, it was teamwork that turned the tide. Humanity and the Zanari fought side by side, combining their strengths to overcome the odds. Together, they destroyed the drones and secured the stronghold, ensuring the Veil's influence was neutralized. When the dust settled, Elena stood amidst the wreckage, exhausted but triumphant. Around her, survivors from both species began the arduous process of rebuilding. The war was over, but the scars would remain for individuals, for civilizations, and for the galaxy itself. As she gazed out at the stars, Elena reflected on everything they had endured. The massacre, the lies, the sacrifices, it had all led to this moment. Humanity and the Zanari had proven that cooperation was possible, even in the darkest of times. But questions lingered. Was the Veil truly defeated? Or would they rise again, seeking vengeance? For now, though, peace had been achieved. And in the vastness of space, hope flickered like a distant star, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable odds, unity could prevail.